Hello? Where are you right now? Oh, you're home already. I'm at my parents' house. Your parents' house. What happened to the furniture? Oh, I'm taking all of that with me. One day, after a meeting with the real estate agent, I got home late. I found that my husband, who was supposed to be working from home, was gone, and the house was nearly empty. And the words from my husband on the phone were baffling. What are you thinking? I don't understand. Did you want to run away from home? Hello? You didn't call until this late, so you must have been out having fun, right? What's going on? I talked to our son, and he said he's divorcing you to live with us. So, you're no longer needed. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it became clear that my husband had decided to abandon our life together. He wants a divorce. I had no idea why he would think that, but I've reached my limit. I thought about cutting him off for good, but... Well, if you say you'll work properly as a maid, you can come to where we're moving. But you'll work non-stop, 24/7. Why do I have to be subjected to such terms in this situation? He wants a divorce, right? There's no way I'd become a maid for someone like that. No, thank you. I'm divorcing someone who only makes about $1,400 a month from remote work. What? My name is Emily. I currently live off real estate investments. I started investing in real estate about a year ago. After a lot of studying, I was able to succeed within a reasonable period. How's it going lately? Real estate? I've got a new tenant recently, so my income has increased a bit. I've saved up some money too, so I'm thinking of buying another place. That's really impressive. I respect that. Well, if there were no tenants, this business would be over, so it's not stable. I've been dating a guy for 6 months, and I told him that I live off real estate investments. He works in sales at a major company and was very interested in my investments, so I've been teaching him a lot. I want to start too, but it seems quite challenging. I think it can be very lucrative if it goes well. Yeah, that's true. I've sold some that didn't go well, too. I guess it's best for me to keep working under someone. He said this with a laugh, but I've had my share of bitter experiences too. That's why I'm able to earn well through real estate investments now, thanks to those bitter experiences. Well, some people might want to take that risk and challenge themselves, and others might not want to take such risks. That's up to each person, and I don't think it's bad, so I respect him for working hard in a different way than I do. One day, about a year into our relationship, he said, "Will you marry me?" What? Marriage. I want to make you happy for the rest of my life. I've come to feel this from the bottom of my heart. So, will you be with me? I was over 30, so I was nervous about marriage. There were many times I thought about what if I couldn't get married. It's not like I can get married just because I have money, unlike men. That's why I was truly grateful to him for proposing to me, and I felt from the bottom of my heart that I wanted to be happy with him. However, after we got married, my husband's attitude changed dramatically. Now that we're married, I want to move. Can't we move into one of your vacant properties? You have some that are vacant, right? What? Vacant properties. Well, there are some that don't have tenants yet, but those weren't bought for personal use. Is making money more important to you? I didn't think you were that much of a money grubber. Money grubber. I'm not being stingy. The properties I buy for real estate are basically considered how many years it will take to recoup and how much profit they will make. If I lived in them myself, the entire repayment plan for the real estate would be messed up. I don't expect someone who knows nothing about real estate investment to understand, but at least I want him to listen to my story. I have a repayment plan and all. It's not that simple to just decide to live in them ourselves. Just because we have a nice property, not using it for your own family. Money is the most important thing to you, huh? I get it. What my husband did was practically a denial of my character. I couldn't say anything back after being treated like that. Besides, no matter how much I explained, he wouldn't even pretend to listen, and I realized that no matter how desperately I tried to explain, it would be pointless. Well, we didn't have any financial issues at the moment, and my husband had his own salary. Because of my real estate investments, it's true that we own some nice places that normally wouldn't be affordable. So, I thought maybe it's okay to indulge his whims to a certain extent. However, it was about 6 months after our marriage began. I woke him up for work as usual that day. "Why are you waking me up so early?" "Why?" "It's time to go to work." "Oh. I came back late last night and hadn't told you, but I quit my job." "What?" "He quit his job. I couldn't just let that go." "What does that mean?" He hadn't consulted me at all, and from the way he said it, it sounded like he quit on his own, not that he was fired. Why would he resign without any discussion? Why would you do something so arbitrary without any discussion? Is there some problem? Although I was upset about being decided for one-sidedly, maybe there was some psychological stress caused by his work environment. Since I didn't know what had happened, I decided to try and talk calmly first. "Why didn't you discuss anything with me beforehand? We can live comfortably on your income alone, so that should be enough, right?" "What? Why should I kill myself working and take on all that stress when we can live comfortably without me working? There's no point in doing that, and it's a waste of time and effort." "Wait a minute. Did he quit his job because we have my income? I can't accept that. Of course, I have a decent income, but it's not like we have enough money to just live leisurely forever. Besides, we had discussed continuing to work for the sake of any future children we might have and in case anything happened with the real estate investments. Yet, what on earth is he thinking?" "Wait a minute. Why are you doing this? We had talked about continuing to work considering our future plans." "That's in the past, isn't it? I've changed my mind. Besides, the real estate is doing quite well, and you were talking about buying the next property, right? If it's making that much money, there shouldn't be a problem. That's not the point. And even if he decided to quit his job, shouldn't he have at least consulted me about it? We're living as a married couple, after all. How can he make such a unilateral decision without discussing it with me? If he really cared about the family, he wouldn't be able to make such a decision." Yet, I was utterly dismayed and, above all, shocked. "I never thought you were such a selfish person." "It's not something to get so mad about, right? I'll help around the house, and well, if things get tough, I'll start working again, so don't worry so much." "No. That's not what I'm trying to say." I was at a loss for words, but I realized that arguing with my husband any further was pointless. In the following days, my anger didn't subside, and we hardly spoke, but I knew staying angry wouldn't help. If he wasn't gonna work, I decided he should at least help with the housework, and I tried to reset my mindset and respect his feelings. After that, there weren't any major issues, and my husband was helping with the housework, so we continued our life as before until one day. "Tonight, my mom and dad are coming over, so please take care of them." "What? Was this decided suddenly?" "Not really sudden, but I forgot to mention it." "Forgetting to mention it. How am I supposed to prepare on such short notice?" Of course, I always kept the house clean, so it wasn't a problem for them to come over. However, if his parents were coming, I wanted to prepare properly, and I had plans for today. I was frustrated by my husband's selfishness for moving ahead without considering these things, but this wasn't a new behavior. I hadn't seen his parents since our marriage introduction, so it had been a while, but nothing was gonna change. I cleaned as usual and waited for his parents to arrive. "It's been a while. Have you been well?" "It's been a while." "Yes, I've been well. It's rude that you haven't shown your face since then, but at least you've been keeping up with the housework." It's frustrating to be insulted like this upon reuniting after so long. We weren't particularly close since the marriage introduction, and it didn't irritate me too much, but there was no need to insult me the moment we meet after such a long time. Well, it's true I hadn't shown my face, and I'm not gonna complain about that, but it's not like they had a grandchild or something. I'm not idle every day, so I don't have time to visit a far-off in-laws place just for fun. They don't consider that. Well, thinking about it now won't help. They'll probably leave by evening, so I just need to endure until then. That was my thought. However, are you really grateful for living in such a house? You're absolutely right. While you're a housewife, the luxurious life you live is thanks to someone else, so think about who's making it possible. Come on, both of you, calm down. I'm making good money, and doing this much is nothing to me. What? There's a lot I want to say. First, why do I have to be insulted by my in-laws to this extent? I could understand if it was just a little teasing, but there's a line between what you can and cannot say. I don't want them meddling in our marital relationship, and whatever lifestyle we choose to have should be our business. I'm also not happy with what my husband said. Just when I thought he would defend me, he's siding with his parents instead. He talks as if he's earned the money for this mansion we live in and is supporting me. But he's unemployed, and I'm the one paying for everything. Despite that, let's just end this discussion here. If I were to contradict what my husband is saying, it would immediately reveal that he's lying. So, in a panic, he suggested ending the conversation, but I'm not planning to let this go as if nothing happened. I don't need their respect. But I was irritated by my husband's behavior, which only considered himself even as I was being insulted. I didn't plan to make a big issue out of it, so I waited for his parents to leave that day before I confronted my husband. It seemed like there was a misunderstanding that I'm using your money to live lavishly. What was that about? If they thought I wasn't working, it would worry my parents, wouldn't it? Well, you aren't working, so it can't be helped. Besides, I was being criticized, and you didn't even try to defend me. What were you thinking? A wife is supposed to be disliked by her husband's parents, so why bother getting worked up about it? No. What is he even saying? I can't understand how he can say such things so boldly. Is it because he genuinely doesn't see anything wrong with what he's doing? Until now, I hadn't paid much attention to what he said, but if he truly thinks this way about me. Thinking this way, I started to wonder if I could continue this marriage any longer. Although it was just a faint feeling at first, it began to grow stronger. It probably showed in my demeanor as well. Maybe that's why our conversations dwindled, and gradually we stopped making eye contact. One day, I had a meeting about a property I was interested in with a real estate agent, which meant I came home quite late. I'm home. Huh? When I got home, I couldn't believe my eyes. It wasn't completely empty, but many pieces of furniture were gone. Moreover, the items that were missing were exclusively expensive, branded furniture. As newlyweds, I had carefully selected each piece of furniture, even though they were quite pricey. Now, they were gone, and so was my husband. Could it be, had he taken the furniture and left on his own? That thought crossed my mind, and I immediately called my husband. Hello? Where are you right now? Oh, you're home already. I'm at my parents' house. Your parents' house. What happened to the furniture? Oh, I'm taking all of that with me. What? I'm exhausted from a long meeting. Please don't complicate things further. He has been selfish many times before, but this is just incomprehensible. What was he thinking taking the furniture and leaving? What are you thinking? I don't understand. Did you want to run away from home? Hello? You didn't call until this late, so you must have been out having fun, right? What's going on? I talked to our son, and he said he's divorcing you to live with us. So, you're no longer needed. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it became clear that my husband had decided to abandon our life together. He wants a divorce. I had no idea why he would think that, but I've reached my limit. I thought about cutting him off for good, but... Well, if you say you'll work properly as a maid, you can come to where we're moving. But you'll work non-stop, 24/7. Why do I have to be subjected to such terms in this situation? He wants a divorce, right? There's no way I'd become a maid for someone like that. No, thank you. I'm divorcing someone who only makes about $1,400 a month from remote work. What? What are you talking about? What? That's exactly what I want to say. Could it be, he doesn't understand his current situation at all? Now that I think about it, my husband did ask me to keep his unemployment a secret because he didn't want to worry his parents. If that's the case, his parents might still think he's working and supporting me. What are you talking about? My husband only makes $1,400 a month. That's a lie. He makes at least $140,000. Plus, he has savings so he can take us on trips. No, that's just not possible. I've been supporting our household. It's likely all due to my husband's lies. What is he thinking? What is his plan for living after divorcing me? Can I speak to my husband? We need to discuss a few things. Hello? Hello? First, I need you to explain this situation. What's going on exactly? Haven't you told your parents about your actual income being $1,400 a month? No. I wouldn't let him off the hook for not anticipating this situation. I don't know why he wants a divorce, but did he really think it wouldn't come out? He might not have expected me to call, but it would become obvious that he has no money soon after a divorce. I thought he would understand that. First off, why do you want a divorce? And how did you plan to live after the divorce? Well, I thought if I sold all the real estate you own, it would amount to a considerable sum. That's why I wanted the property. What? What is he talking about? Wanting a divorce just for money? How can he act without thinking of the consequences? And, he's greatly mistaken. Does he really think he could get half of my assets after divorcing me? If so, that's wildly out of touch. Well, okay, then I'll give you a divorce. Just sign the divorce papers and send them to me in the mail if you want. About that, I've already signed the divorce papers and left them in the kitchen cupboard. Just submit them as they are. Hearing that, I immediately checked the kitchen cupboard. There, perfectly completed, was the divorce form, confirming he had been planning to divorce me all along. He must think he can take a lot of money from me and then divorce me, but it's not gonna be that simple. However, since I also wanted to be divorced, I submitted the divorce papers right away. After submitting them to the office, I called my husband again. We needed to discuss the division of property now that we were divorced. Hello? I need to talk about the division of property. Is now a good time? Yeah. So, how much will it all add up to? How much for the division of property? There's hardly anything. What? At that moment, my husband was genuinely shocked. He must have thought he could get most of my property, but that was never gonna happen. He probably misunderstood that all my property became communal property upon marriage, but that's a big mistake. My property and our communal property are separate things. I think you understand, but the property I built before we were married isn't subject to division, right? No, what are you talking about? You own multiple properties, so shouldn't they all be split in half after the divorce? That's not how it works at all. First of all, why should I have to share the property I earned on my own with you? Marital property is about what we've accumulated together while living cooperatively in the marriage, not about the assets I had before we married, right? I always suspected, but it seems my husband thought he could get a huge fortune by divorcing me. I didn't just own 1 or 2 properties, the total was quite substantial. I don't know who put the idea in his head, but it was really foolish. However, this turned out to be a good thing for me. I now realize that he married me for my money. That's why his attitude changed so quickly after our wedding, demanding to live in my properties, quitting his job on a whim. He was dishonest from the start. I should have seen it from the beginning, but I was too naive. If I had known you were this kind of person, I wouldn't have married you. But I'm glad the divorce went smoothly. Wait! I take back the divorce! A withdrawal of the divorce? Now that he knows he won't get any money, he's changing his tune. But after showing his true colors this much, does he really think I would agree not to divorce? There's no way I'd agree to that. Are you kidding me? I was wrong about everything. I truly am sorry. Can't you forgive me? Forgive you? There's no way I would. You wanted to use me as a maid, right? Why should I pay and still take care of you? If he were truly sorry, he wouldn't be asking for forgiveness. A person who is genuinely remorseful and cares about me would accept the divorce and part ways. He's just shown that he can only think of himself until the end. Look, the divorce papers are already submitted, so I'm cutting ties. And if you have any complaints, you can take it to court if you have the money for it. With that, I hung up the phone. Of course, things are gonna be tough for him now, but that's not my concern anymore. He judged people by their wealth and tried to use me till the end. He's gonna pay for that. I think he should suffer for the rest of his life, that's his retribution. Then, since the house was too big for me to live in alone and my ex-husband knows the place, I decided to move out quickly and started packing. Strangely, I felt relieved even though I had just divorced, with no regrets at all. However, it was about an hour after ending the call with my ex-husband. He showed up at the house. Hey. What are you thinking? What do you mean? Did you really submit the divorce papers? That's so selfish. What? What are you talking about? You're the one being selfish. You were the one who told me to file for divorce, and now that things aren't going your way, you want me to stop? Do you really think such a self-centered argument is gonna fly? If you keep talking nonsense, I'll contact a lawyer, okay? We are divorced now, so don't show up here anymore. If you continue to bother me, I'll do what I threatened before. That's all I have to say. With that, I attempted to close the front door. I have nothing else to discuss with my ex-husband, and just talking to him makes me sick to my stomach. He had the nerve to show his face after betraying me. But this is the end. I will never meet him again in my life. I was trying to close the door, but my ex-husband stubbornly wouldn't let it shut. With the difference in strength between a man and a woman, there was no way I could overpower him. How much more trouble does he need to cause me? What are you trying to do? I want you to stop bothering me. How am I supposed to explain this to my parents? I told them I was earning a living. What was your plan after we divorced and my income was gone? You can't possibly say you had no plan, right? I thought I'd get a huge sum from your real estate, and everything went wrong. This is your fault. Take responsibility. Seriously. It infuriates me that he would trouble me until the very end. How much more does he need to annoy me? I'm not wrong in what I'm saying. It's all his fault. I want him to stop. I've reached my limit. You don't have a face to show your parents? That's not my problem. You quit your job on your own and aimed for my assets when you asked for a divorce. It's a logical outcome. Thinking you could get good results without any effort is a huge mistake. Get your facts straight. Can you stop joking around? I'm gonna call the police right now. I'm being stalked by a divorced husband. Wait, calling me a stalker is a bit much. I just came to talk and try to reconcile. Why won't you even have that conversation? Just to set things straight, you were the one who unilaterally took all the furniture and wanted a divorce, right? It was you who started this one-sided conversation, and now you expect me to talk? That doesn't work. It's good for you but not for others? That's not how it works. You started this, so you need to accept it. And one more thing, if you think you can live off others without working your entire life, you're terribly mistaken. When I raised my voice and said that, my ex-husband completely shrank back and fell silent. I took the chance to slam the door shut and lock it. He rang the doorbell for a while and tried to speak to me through the door, but when I completely ignored him, he finally gave up and left. Later, I warned his parents that if he caused me any more trouble, I would report them to the police. Maybe they scolded him because I haven't heard from him since. I was deceived in such a way that I wanted to demand compensation, but I could see that he would struggle just by me being gone, and there was no need for me to do anything more. I can live a happy life on my own, and they will have a tough life because of their choices. After that, I completely cut ties and was enjoying my life alone. However, I heard a story from a mutual acquaintance. After our divorce, my ex-husband struggled to find a new job and was so desperate for money that he started asking various people for loans. It seems he was doing some kind of unclear home-based job just before our divorce, but if he only made a few thousand a month, he couldn't sustain himself. Since he spent what he earned on leisure, he likely had almost no savings, and his financial situation deteriorated quickly. I later learned that his parents were under the impression that he had money, and they hardly had any savings. I always knew they liked Diessinger's brand goods and were vain, and I sensed that trait was passed down to my ex-husband, but I didn't think they had no savings even though they were retired. So, they rely on my ex-husband to get by, but he has no money. In this vicious cycle, the family eventually fell apart, and they are almost estranged now. Well, it's not my concern anymore, and whatever happens to them doesn't matter to me. I think karma caught up with them. They just rubbed people the wrong way and tried to make themselves feel good about themselves. Because they kept thinking such dirty thoughts, they ended up suffering themselves. I heard my ex-husband lost his friends and is struggling daily without money. As for his parents, cut off by their son and without money, I wonder how they will manage. They might have to resort to welfare, but for such prideful and vain people, it must be a miserable existence. By the way, after focusing on my work, I increased my profits from real estate investments and now live a luxurious life every day. I was always frugal, but now I travel and spend my money and time meaningfully, enjoying every day. It's strange how different our lives turned out, even though we were once family. I think it's simply because I knew how to work hard and he didn't. I have always worked hard towards my goals and the things I want to achieve in life, and this is simply the result of that effort. Moving forward, I intend to continue working hard to ensure I don't end up living a life like my ex-husband's and to cherish those around me. It's such a headache dealing with my father-in-law. When sales are low, I punish him by skipping his meal. My sister-in-law, Yvonne, blurted out. She drives her father to work from dawn till dusk and even withholds his dinner. My brother simply chuckled at this, unfazed by her harsh words. Poor old man. I'll take him in, I offered. Great. I'll be relieved to be rid of that deadbeat. With these words echoing behind us, my family and I began a life under the same roof with my father. As it turned out, my father was a god of fortune in disguise. My name is Sally. A 33-year-old part-time working mom with a husband and a daughter who is a kindergartner. My husband recently took over his father's business, running a small diner. Ever since he was a child, he looked up to his father, who would start working early in the morning and serve piping hot meals with sweat pouring down his face. He once told me that his father was even more of a hero than any football player or superhero. The steam dancing around Dad as he cooked was just magical. I swear he was dancing with the food goddess. This remark made me question his sanity. But I too saw at the moment I tasted my father-in-law's cooking. It was as if he was indeed dancing with a food goddess. We were somewhat of a weird couple. We got married in our mid-20s. And were blessed with a daughter a few years later. Those were probably our happiest days. However, not long after our daughter was born, my father-in-law fell ill and passed away. His absence was a huge blow to my husband, who had already lost his mother. He even considered closing down the restaurant. But his staff and regular customers encouraged him. You're the only one who can carry on his legacy. We want that taste to remain. Only you can do that. Their words inspired my husband, and so he decided to face the challenge, hoping his father would watch over him from the afterlife. However, things were not smooth from the start. Even if he managed to replicate the taste, customers compared him to his father. In other words, he had to surpass his father to be truly recognized. Although he had taken over the business, it didn't pick up as expected and my husband was troubled. Then, another tragedy struck. My mother passed away. I was worried about leaving my grieving father alone, but the 1-hour drive made it difficult to visit him regularly. Seeing my concern, my brother offered to move in with my father. I was grateful, but also had mixed feelings. My brother has always been a bit careless. After all, his favorite phrase is "everything will be alright, believe it or not." My brother was always a bit irresponsible. Adding to my worries was my sister-in-law, Yvonne. "Oh, your husband's a high school dropout? Unbelievable." She casually tossed at us when we first met. She would openly belittle me. "A part-timer? You're a loser as a woman." And they even did not attend my mother's funeral. Apparently, my brother had quit his job to start a cafe and claimed he was too busy. "When did you learn to run a cafe?" I asked, to which he nonchalantly replied, "I used to skip work and hang out at cafes. Thought it'd be fun to run one." This almost made me faint. And now, since they moved in with my father, they've started making him help out at the cafe. And they make him work all for free. When I asked her, "What about you, Yvonne? Shouldn't you be the one helping out first?" She replied, "Nah, I don't work. A man's gotta support his wife, right? What on earth is nah?" She can't even be bothered to include the T in not, that lazy woman. What could my brother possibly see in her that he willingly supports her? Then, one day, we decided to visit our family home on a rare day off. Despite informing my brother ahead of time, only Yvonne was at the house when we arrived. "Hello, Yvonne, it's been a while." Yeah, come on in. Make yourself at home. I'll just be watching TV." Yvonne was as insufferable as always. Where's my brother?" "Oh, he said something about sales being down this month, so he decided to open the shop." "Oh, I see." I was taken aback. "Well, it's actually more comfortable without him around," she added. I was shocked not only by my brother's sudden decision to work, but also by Yvonne's attitude. Who says they're better off without their spouse, especially in front of their spouse's sister? I walked into the living room, but no one was there. I thought maybe Dad was in his room, so I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. When I opened the door quietly and peered inside, I was lost for words. There was no trace of my father's room. Instead, there was a room painted in an obnoxiously bright pink color. It was so pink that it made my eyes hurt. "Yvonne, Dad's room looks strange. Could he possibly have dementia?" I rushed back to the living room and asked Yvonne, but she was lounging on the sofa, engrossed in the TV. "Oh, don't worry about it. That's my room now," she said dismissively. "But that used to be Dad's study. It was a waste of space, so I got rid of it. Books don't do anything for you." "Got rid of it? And I made it into my room. Isn't it cute, all pink?" I didn't say anything about her taste, but I couldn't stay silent about my father. "Doesn't my brother have a room with you?" "Yeah, we got the biggest room. But I wanted a room just for me. So, my old room." "Oh, that's my storage room. I've been collecting stuff since I was single, and that's where I keep it all." In a panic, I swung open the door of my old room, and was greeted by more blinding pink. How much does she love pink? "Mom, it's so pink!" My daughter, who had come to peek into the room with me, commented with wide eyes. Even for a little girl, who usually loves pink, this was too much. That was how much pink there was in my old room. A mountain of boxes stacked up to the ceiling. And pink merchandise covered every inch of the room. I wondered if the floor would give out. But right now, I had more pressing concerns. I hurried back to the living room and confronted Yvonne, who was clutching a pink cushion. "Where is Dad's room?" My father's study and my old room had been taken over by pink, and the big room was occupied by my brother and his wife. This house only has 3 rooms, excluding the living room and kitchen. It used to be my parents' room, my brother's room, and my room. By the way, since my brother moved out, his room became my father's study. I wonder where my dad sleeps. I thought he must have converted his study into a bedroom. To my surprise, Yvonne said to me, "He sleeps on this couch," as she casually dropped cookie crumbs all over the couch. "What?" As I was at a loss for words, I heard some commotion at the front door. Upon heading there, I found my father, his face pale, standing with the aid of my brother.
Dad! What on earth happened?
I questioned my brother as I supported my father, who looked like he was about to collapse. But my brother just shrugged and said nonchalantly, "He collapsed while helping at the shop."
He collapsed. What about the hospital?
It's too much hassle.
Huh?
Hospitals are just a waste of money. If you're free, can you help me out at the shop?
Who's gonna help you, you dimwit? Get your wife to work first.
I found myself shouting before rushing to take my father to the hospital. After returning home, I confronted my brother and his wife.
He's been diagnosed with overwork. How much have you been making Dad work?
That's right, my father had collapsed from overwork. My dad is now lying on the couch. It's pitiful to see he doesn't even have a proper bed. As my face turned red with anger, my brother and his wife were still grinning. It's not a big deal. We just had him get up at 3 a.m. to prepare for opening the shop, then he serves customers. In between, he does dishes and cleaning. And after 8 p.m., he closes the shop. Are you a demon or something? Even prisoners get breaks. The anger kept building due to their atrocious behavior. But my brother didn't seem to understand why I was upset. We're letting him live with us, so it's only right that he helps us out. As I was at a loss for words, my sister-in-law nodded in agreement. That's right. We are having difficulties because he's not being useful. On days when sales are down, we punish him by skipping his meals. He still doesn't seem to get it though. Oh, of course, he won't get a meal today neither. What? Hold on. What did you just say? Punishment for not being useful? Skipping meals? This can't be real. The father I hadn't seen in a while was physically and emotionally worn out. With such outrageous behavior, I was so angry I couldn't find the words to speak. Well, now you know, sister, so you can take him. Here. I didn't quite understand what my sister-in-law was saying, and as I was tilting my head in confusion, a duffel bag was placed in front of me. What's this? This is all your father's belongings. Wait, this is all of Dad's stuff? That's right. No way, that can't be true. My dad, who had always lived in this house, only has this one duffel bag of belongings. I couldn't believe it and looked at my brother, who was smirking and nodding. Is this really all he has? So, we're gonna have the useless one leave. What? My sister-in-law's words left me speechless, and my brother agreed. Yeah, it's troublesome to live with him any longer. Since he's not useful, you should take him in, sis. Just as I was about to explode with anger at their outrageous behavior, a cheerful voice echoed throughout the room.
Huh, Grandpa's coming to live with us? Yay!
My daughter, who had been occupied by my husband, had surprisingly been listening to the conversation. Confused, I asked my daughter, "Do you want to live with Grandpa?"
Yes, I want to live with Grandpa.
She's just a little girl. She probably doesn't fully understand the situation, but her words gave me the push I needed. I looked at my husband, who was holding our daughter. Honey. He must have understood what I was trying to say. He quietly nodded and said, "Yes, let's do that. Let's take in your father." Thank you. Our family is by no means wealthy. Our ramen shop business isn't going well, and my part-time job doesn't bring in much income. Our lives will definitely become tougher. Still, I can't bear to leave my father in his current state any longer. Dad. I gently spoke to my father, who was lying down. Let's go home together. As I said this, my father, with barely opened eyes, said, "Thank you. It feels great to finally get rid of the dead weight." My sister-in-law threw these words at us as we were leaving. Ignoring her harsh words, we took my father and went home. I was filled with anger and regret. I was upset about losing my childhood home, and even more upset with myself for trusting my brother. I'm sorry, Dad. I had no idea that my brother would turn out this way. Even though my brother has always been irresponsible, he used to be better. Sure, he had his rebellious phase where he clashed with our parents, but I never thought he'd stoop this low. However, my father shook his head with a feeble smile. Don't worry about it. It's my responsibility for raising him to be this way. And I was the one who pushed myself too hard in order to help my son. I couldn't hold back my tears at my father's kindness and said, "You don't have to work anymore. We don't have much to spare, so we can't afford luxuries, but you can rest. I can't take on more shifts at my part-time job because I still have my toddler daughter. But once she enters elementary school, I'll increase my hours. If possible, I'll even aim to become a full-time employee. There's so much more I can do for my father and my family. I'm gonna work hard. Thank you." My father smiled warmly at me as I clenched my fist. For a while after that, we had peaceful days. My father regained his health thanks to the much-needed rest. He now spends time with my daughter. My daughter is thrilled to be living with her beloved grandpa. Even though life was hard, I had no regrets about bringing my father into our home. He tried to give us his pension to help with our expenses, but I refused. Apparently, my father doesn't have much savings left. Apparently, my younger brother and his wife had been seriously milking him for money for living expenses. What's that about? I guess that's why he said he was worthless, because he'd been drained to the point of destitution. Really a ridiculous couple. Days continued to pass peacefully, but gradually changes began to appear. The changes came to my husband. Specifically, they came to my husband's restaurant. Lately, we've been getting a lot of customers. My husband muttered one day.
Really? That's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, yes, but... The hesitation in my husband's voice makes me tilt my head. It's great if your business is doing well, right? I think the taste has improved because I'm constantly researching, but I feel like there's something more to it than just that. What do you mean? I don't know. I have no involvement in the store, so if my husband, the owner, doesn't know, there's no way I can know. I wonder what it is. The conversation ended there, and I told my father. Dad, I've got a part-time job tomorrow morning. Can you have lunch at the restaurant? Sure thing. My father, who is fully recovered, still has a healthy appetite. On days when I can't prepare lunch, he eats at my husband's restaurant. My husband seems to be considerate and tries not to make the meals too greasy, but my father seems to really like the original taste. And he's even paying for his meals. Even if I refuse many times, he won't listen, saying, "It's not good to mix business and personal matters. If you're proud of what you're making, you should accept the payment properly." So now my husband seems to accept the payment without arguing. And then the next day. My husband came home when I was putting our daughter to bed, and as soon as he entered the door, he shouted,
"I've figured it out!"
"What have you figured out?"
"The reason why the restaurant is thriving."
"What was it?"
"Well, that person did this and did that."
"What's the result of all that?"
"Hey, speak clearly."
"You too. Let's both calm down for a moment." He seemed to calm down after gulping down the cold tea I had brought him. Sitting on the sofa, my husband began to talk about what had happened that day. "Today, in the afternoon when the restaurant was less busy, your father came in. And as soon as he came in, people started gathering around him." "Huh? Your father is a god of fortune." "What? What are you talking about?" "My father is just an old man." My husband continues. "I asked some of the regulars." "Yeah. Apparently, they really like your father's life advice." "What?" "I was always too busy with food preparation and cooking to notice, but it seems that your father has been answering the customers' life questions." "What's all this about?" Apparently, the story goes something like this. My father had become a familiar face to the customers because he frequently visited my husband's restaurant. In fact, my father is a retired teacher and has a way with words that carries quite some relevance. By chance, a certain white-collar worker once shared his complaints with my dad. My father, while eating his meal, advised him, and apparently the man made a successful career progression after that. "Huh? And hearing this story, a part-time worker asked to have a lunch with your father for consultation. They talked while eating our chili bean stew, and thanks to his advice, this part-time worker was able to become a full-time employee at the company he wanted to work at. Really? Another female customer shared her relationship issues with her unfaithful boyfriend over hot sandwiches with him. Okay. Now she's the wife of an Arab oil tycoon. You're kidding, right? Well, actually, she ended up happily together with a new boyfriend. A legend was born that consulting with my father while eating our menu leads to a turning point in life. What is this person even talking about? I cast a skeptical glance at my husband who's feeding me this dubious information. Just then, my freshly bathed father appeared and I decided to ask him directly. Hey, Dad. Did you give advice to anyone today? Oh, well, I guess so. Perhaps because I'm getting on in years, people find it easier to talk to me. What did they talk about today? Let's see, a troubled father of a shut-in son, and a university student who was about to be held back a year for failing a course. You're kidding me. Apparently he's been giving advice, that much seems certain. Based on what he said, I didn't see how either of those situations could be easily resolved. I went to bed that night still half doubting the whole thing. But then, a few days later, I've got the investigation results, said my husband with a solemn look on his face. All right, I'll listen to your urban legend. What is it? The father of the shut-in son who my dad gave advice to the other day said his son has started going out and even got a part-time job. He was in tears when he came to tell us. Really? He said he talked it out with his son exactly as father suggested. And then there's the university student who was supposed to repeat a year. Well, if the decision's been made, he can't do much about repeating a year. Maybe he regained his spirits and got motivated again? He was able to move on to the next grade. What the hell? Apparently, he had failed a course taught by a very strict professor, which was causing him to repeat a year. But he went to the professor's office, passionately argued his case, and in the end, his paper was accepted and he happily advanced to the next grade. That can't be. I never went to college, let alone high school, so I'm not sure, but isn't that how college works? Well, whether it's accepted or not depends on the professor, I guess. And so, my father's reputation skyrocketed. By the way, there was a guy who came just to seek advice without ordering anything. How rude! To sit in the shop without ordering anything, he must have nerves of steel. Well, your father didn't really give this guy any substantial advice. It seems the guy's situation ended up even more dire. So, in other words, yeah, he is amazing. No, not that. It's not your cooking that's getting the rave reviews. You really had to say that? Hearing the harsh truth, my husband looked utterly dejected. But I mean, if the food wasn't good, they would just order the cheapest dish or just a drink. Since they're ordering properly, it must taste decent, right? At least decent. Regardless of the reason, my husband's shop began to thrive. Of course, customers continue to come even when my father isn't there, so it must mean the food is good, right? Good job, honey. Just as everything was going well, an unexpected event occurred. A storm has arrived. Namely, my younger brother and his wife. This happened by chance when I took a day off from my part-time job and went with my dad to my husband's restaurant. Despite the fact it was before opening hours, the door abruptly swung open, and someone yelled, "Give me back my dad!" as they stormed in. My brother confronted me, venting with raw anger. I saw it online. Your business is booming because of Dad's life counseling. Even when Dad helped at my place, our sales were terrible, and now we're almost going under. What's with this difference? He demanded. You were pushing all the work onto Dad. How could he give life advice while busy with that? I retorted. Struck by my words, my brother faltered. At that moment, his wife stepped forward, pushing him aside. We won't make him work anymore. He just needs to sit and give life advice. Look, my father-in-law would prefer to live in his own home, right? We came to pick him up, so let's go home. She said assertively. How unreasonable. They practically threw him out, and now they have the nerve to turn the tables like this. It's outrageous. As if we'd ever hand Dad over to those two devils. As I was about to respond in kind, it was my dad who stopped me. He put his hand out in front of me, indicating I should hold back. He then moved to stand in front of my brother and his wife, who were now silent. Dad spoke quietly.
I understand what you've asked for. If things continue like this, your restaurant will surely go under.
So, you should give life advice in our restaurant. My brother started.
Let me be clear.
Dad interrupted.
Those who come for advice primarily want to eat at this restaurant. But your place, a cafe? It's no good, absolutely no good.
But that's not. My brother tried to argue.
It's true.
Dad continued.
Did you ever train anywhere to learn how to brew coffee? We thought we could manage by watching some online tutorials.
My brother replied sheepishly.
Yeah, that much is clear. Your desserts, like the cakes, are also pretty dreadful. It's no wonder sales are dropping and you're on the brink of closure.
But, stunned by Dad's critiques, my brother fell silent. He tried to argue, but couldn't find the words.
Don't disrespect your work.
Dad chided him. Yes. My brother replied, crestfallen.
How can you expect to have any customers if you're this casual about everything? Conversations are based on customers coming to enjoy a good meal. No one would come to your place since it's so dreadful.
Dad stated. The statement must have been spot on. My brother was at a loss for words.
Nobody would come for life advice either. Go back to basics and train properly. I won't lend a hand to you two, who take everything for granted.
He scolded them. With my brother and his wife not being able to reply, Dad shouted once more.
Don't disrespect your work.
After that, my brother and his wife left, unable to keep up with my father's momentum. It turned out that they left after talking to Dad without eating anything at my husband's restaurant. So, what happens next? Well, they say that giving advice without any food makes things even worse, right? It seemed that my brother's restaurant closed down without much ado. The debt they incurred when opening the place not only remained unpaid, but continued to pile up beyond their capacity to repay. My dad, in his kindness, gifted them our old family home as a parting gift, but even selling that couldn't cover their debt. It seems they're now living a life of extreme poverty in a rundown apartment. It turns out that not only my brother, but his wife, too, were in debt. I can only imagine the hardship those two debt-ridden souls must be going through. In contrast, my family and I are leading a prosperous life. My husband's restaurant is thriving, and I've quit my part-time job to help him out. It's pretty tough, but it's a joy to see my husband working so hard up close. Our spry dad helps us out by taking care of our daughter when we're busy. He doesn't give life advice much anymore, but customers still come, which makes us really happy because it means my husband's efforts are being recognized. Today, my husband is again cooking expertly in every ways. And when he cooks, the steam dances up, joining in a dance with the goddess of food.
Wait, you're sleeping there?
While my brother and his wife are on a trip, I'm house-sitting with my niece at my brother's house. As we discuss tomorrow's plans with excitement, my niece starts to open the closet door, seemingly ready for bed. Surprised, I watch her slide into the closet without hesitation. As I hurriedly grasp her arm, she looks up at me with a puzzled expression. I'm Lily. I am a 24-year-old housewife. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. Having lost our parents, we've always been supportive of each other due to our close sibling bond. This hasn't changed even after we both got married. We still maintain a family-oriented relationship. While my husband's parents are nice, they live quite far away. A distance that requires a plane ride. Due to the long distance, something you'd typically need to fly to cover, it's not so easy to ask for his help. My brother and his wife had a shotgun wedding, but ever since his wife had a fallout with her parents, they've become estranged. Without any neighbors to turn to, we found comfort and ease in our mutually supportive relationship. Furthermore, both our families have been blessed with daughters. For years after my niece was born, my daughter Alice came along, and the girls grew up as close as real sisters. As time went by, my niece Emily was about to turn 10 when John told me about their upcoming 10th wedding anniversary trip.
Would you mind looking after Emily while we're away? It's just an overnight trip nearby. We thought it would be nice to have some alone time as a couple.
Seeing my brother happily blush as he spoke, I readily agreed with a hearty "sure, no problem." We roughly planned out the schedule, and when I asked when I should come to pick up Emily, my brother shook his head. Apparently, my brother was concerned about leaving the house unoccupied due to security reasons and wanted me to stay over instead. Although I teased him for being a worrywart, I eventually agreed to his request, leaving my own daughter, who was still uneasy about sleepovers, in the care of my husband. Days passed uneventfully until the day of their anniversary trip, and as planned, I went to stay at my brother's house. As Emily, looking a bit nervous, watched her parents leave, I took her hand to reassure her. Now, it was just the two of us for the house sitting. Initially, I planned to bring my daughter along and just have my husband pick her up at bedtime. However, Emily was unusually adamant about not inviting her to the house, so I gave up on that plan. Of course, we had visited as a family before, but she must have had a reason for not wanting her here today. "It's a shame we can't invite Alice over to play, but we really can't," Emily said with a hint of loneliness. "Then how about we go to my house after breakfast tomorrow?" I promised, which made her eyes light up. Having prepared some more challenging games and puzzles that even adults would enjoy, in consideration of Emily, who usually played along with my daughter, I asked Emily what she'd like to play as we spread them out. We spent time playing games and preparing dinner together. However, Emily seemed nervous the entire time, sticking close to me and frequently glancing around the room. At first, I thought she was just lonely or anxious without her parents around, but her behavior remained unchanged even after several hours. When I asked if something was bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she just kept saying, "I'm fine. Nothing's wrong," without telling me what was bothering her. Emily's behavior was as if she was on guard against something invisible. I would come to understand its meaning only when bedtime arrived. Changing into her pajamas, Emily said with a smile, "Let's go to bed early today, and start out for Aunt Lily's house in the morning," as she opened the closet door. Inside was a set of bedding, prepared at some unknown time. As I was struggling to grasp the meaning of this, Emily quickly laid down on the mattress and attempted to close the closet door, saying, "Good night."
"Wait, Emily, you're sleeping in there?"
I blurted out, somewhat louder than I intended. Emily replied with a serious face.
"Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it slightly open. If anything happens, I'll wake up right away."
I tried to hide my confusion as I suggested, "Why don't we sleep together tonight?" After a few tries, Emily finally agreed and reluctantly got into my bed. She asked if it was okay to keep the bedding in the closet as her hiding spot, and even though it deepened the mystery for me, I naturally agreed. I then cheerfully asked, "Why do you need a hiding place?" After she made me promise not to laugh, she whispered her answer. "The monster is coming." If that were all there was to her story, I would have thought it endearing in the way children are. However, the story that followed was enough to make me believe in the existence of the monster. Emily shivered and clung to my arm.
"The monster is very scary and clever. That's why it only comes when Daddy is not here. Mommy says I can't leave the closet until she has driven the monster away. She always cries while she's driving it away. I tried to help her once, but it was too scary when it pounded on the closet door."
Hugging the trembling Emily, I let out a sigh inside. This monster was probably real. It probably wasn't a ploy to get a night owl kid into bed. I was caught off guard by my sister-in-law's affair, and I didn't know what to do. If the monster was her lover, it wouldn't come to this house when she wasn't here. Still, Emily believes the monster comes on the days when her father isn't home. The evidence was that today, when my brother wasn't around, she kept asking not to invite my daughter over, and never left my side, always keeping an eye on the windows and the front door. Thinking of sweet Emily and my brother who trusts his wife made me angry at my sister-in-law, but I wanted to reassure Emily more than anything else. I squeezed her hand and smiled at her.
It's okay because Aunt Lily is here today. The monster is smart, right? So, it might get scared and not come in because it sees a stranger. Also, your mom who's always targeted by the monster is with your dad today, so the monster can't approach her.
Still not knowing the true identity of the monster, Emily's face remained clouded with anxiety, and as time passed, she began to fear the monster's imminent arrival. I managed to calm her down as she suggested hiding in the closet together by telling her she could talk to me about anything that bothered her about the monster. I hoped that by addressing each of her concerns one by one, Emily would eventually feel sleepy. However, after hearing another fact from Emily, I couldn't sit still and ended up rushing out of the house with her still in her pajamas. I quickly drove back home, explained the situation to my husband, and then he headed to my brother's house. I had my husband and his friends stay over there. Around 10 p.m. that day, when my husband and his friends had headed over to my brother's house, I received a call from my brother, who was on vacation, asking about Emily's condition.
Did Emily go to bed? Forget about your husband and daughter and get some rest yourself. Make sure to lock the doors, okay? Good night.
After asking about Emily, my brother's final words were to ensure I locked up and got some sleep. I was sternly told not to leave the house, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. After hanging up, I looked at Emily, who was sound asleep with my daughter, and pledged to drive the monster away. The next morning my husband, who had stayed overnight at my brother's house, came back. My body trembled with fear and anger as he told me what happened last night. Relieved that my decision from yesterday had been the right one, I spent the rest of the day at home with Emily and my family, waiting for my brother and his wife to come pick her up. When my brother saw us, he was quick to question why Emily and I had left the house during the night.
Why didn't you guys stay at the other house? I told you repeatedly not to leave our home. What were you thinking, going back to your own place after agreeing not to?
My brother's strong protest that I had broken my promise was met with a surge of discomfort. I coolly asked him how he knew we weren't home while he was on vacation. My brother then responded, "I've given Emily a smartphone with a GPS function." His eyes were evasive as he answered. If that were true, then he wouldn't have insisted so persistently on the phone last night for us not to leave the house. It would have been easy for my brother to verify through the GPS that we weren't at his house. I suppressed the urge to confront my brother immediately and continue the conversation quietly, so the kids in the other room wouldn't hear.
By the way, late last night 2 unfamiliar men showed up at your place. Who were they? Why would they come to a house that should only have Emily and me in the middle of the night? Intruders came? I'm glad you're safe.
My brother's voice was trembling. But it wasn't out of fear for the intruders or relief that his daughter was unharmed. His gaze darted around as if carefully selecting his words.
Hey, about those guys.
I pressed my brother further, demanding to know who the suspicious men were. But my sister-in-law cut me off. Perhaps to prevent more questioning, she loudly called Emily over, insisting they leave. As Emily, who had been playing in the other room, timidly showed her face, her mother forcefully took her hand. Suddenly, my brother also changed his demeanor, saying, "I'm not forgiving you for this, but we're leaving for today." He started pushing Emily towards the door. My brother and his wife forcefully tried to take Emily, who clearly did not want to leave, back home with them.
What? We're not done talking yet. I tried to stop them, but they just ignored me, not even bothering to look back.
Emily, resisting her parents, reached out towards me. I quickly pulled her towards me, sheltering her behind my back.
Hey! What do you think you're doing?
My sister-in-law raised her voice in surprise, letting go of Emily's hand, but I kept Emily behind me, away from my brother and his wife. They spat aggressive words at us and rushed over, fueled by anger. My husband and I were determined not to let them take Emily and managed to force them out of the room. At the front door, waiting police officers swiftly apprehended my brother and his wife. The police tried to calm the disoriented couple, who were clearly not expecting this turn of events. Understanding their predicament, My brother argued, "If you don't give us back our daughter, then you should be the ones getting detained." My sister-in-law added, "They took our daughter from home and locked her up here. Please save Emily right away. You shouldn't be holding me back. I won't run or hide, so let me go," my brother shouted. Emily and my daughter, who had noticed the commotion and come out, were talking behind me, looking surprised. My daughter innocently remarked, "She doesn't seem locked up at all." I'm not sure whether my brother heard her or not, but he turned to Emily and commanded her to come to him in a strong tone. Yet, the severity of her father's demeanor scared her, and she refused to leave my side. My sister-in-law stood silently by the police officer, just watching my brother, not even trying to call Emily over. My brother, irate that things weren't going his way, was yelling in the entrance, completely restrained by the police officer. Seeing this, my husband pushed his smartphone in front of my brother's face. Noticing this, I told Emily and my daughter to wait once more in the other room and shut the door so they wouldn't hear the audio. After confirming this, my husband started playing a video he had recorded at my brother's house the night before, without uttering a word. Upon seeing it, the faces of my brother and his wife immediately turned pale. The video started with a key slowly turning in the lock of the house. It seemed they'd used a spare key. Two men quietly entered the room. The men, appearing in high spirits, greeted each other, mentioning my brother's name, didn't know we had company.
"Hey, how much did you pay?" "He told me it was a 30% discount 'cause she's his sister."
One of them smirked, looking over at my husband and his friends. When my husband's friend gave a vague response, avoiding the question, one of the men boasted that because they were good friends with my brother and his wife, they got an even bigger discount, even going as far as mentioning a specific amount. They continued, "We're lucky we get to play with the kids today." The profile of the man who laughed was so grotesque, it would be an insult to demons to call him one. I couldn't see the screen, but the audio alone was enough to make my skin crawl. Afterwards, my husband's friend started barraging the men with questions, asking if they often came to this house, if they always came as a pair. Sensing something was off, the men asked where Emily and I were. Seeing my husband's enraged expression as he responded, "They're not here," it seemed they finally realized the gravity of the situation. Realizing they weren't among friends here, the men quickly fled. Until the very end, they were either unaware of my husband's recording or deliberately didn't mention it. My brother, supposed to be their close acquaintance, seemed to have discovered the existence of the video for the first time and was shaking. My brother, now deathly pale, frantically stated, "I didn't know anything, I've been framed." I had thought until watching this video that my brother was uninvolved and that my sister-in-law was the mastermind behind everything. However, the video contained clear evidence of my brother offering up Emily and me. His ignorance won't convince anyone. My brother was taken away by the police, and my sister-in-law feigned ignorance of the situation. But the police officer, who had already heard Emily's testimony, asked her to accompany him because he had many questions to ask her. Thus, they ended up in custody together. At a later date, the police interrogated my brother and his wife, who ended up confessing everything and were subsequently arrested. It turns out my sister-in-law would lure men into their home on the nights my brother worked late shifts and receive money from them. Realizing there was a demand for children among certain groups, she carefully exploited Emily in a way that wouldn't run afoul of the law. Emily, who knew nothing and was trying to help her bullied mother, was photographed posing as she was told. The pictures were merely innocent photos of a child. Yet, my sister-in-law would go out of her way to take these simple photos with a disposable camera, develop them, and show them to her customers, inducing a bidding war, as though at an auction. What's more, she only lent out the photos, she never sold them. As despicable as this was, it should have had nothing to do with my husband and me. When my brother became aware of his wife's business, he didn't scold her or protect his daughter. Instead, unbelievably, he started gathering men to become customers. More staff meant more revenue. With such a simple mindset, my brother decided to involve me in the business. Of course, I would never agree to it if he simply asked me. So, my brother thought to force me to work and continued to threaten me by taking photos of the scene. And so,
they carefully chose a day when the neighbors wouldn't be around and locked Emily and me in their house. They exchanged the spare key to their home for a large sum of money and went out of town for an overnight trip, just to prove they weren't involved. What my brother and his wife didn't expect was that Emily, who had always obeyed my sister-in-law without question, regretted telling me about the monsters to protect me. Emily didn't understand most of what was happening in the house, but she did understand that the monsters were targeting them. By telling me, she brought the hellish situation at my brother's house to light. That night, when I learned about Emily's predicament, I asked my husband to capture the image of these so-called monsters. They carelessly leaked a lot of information, so the police acted promptly when we reported it. We also reported it to Child Protective Services, making sure to protect Emily. When we told the police officer about my brother and his wife coming to our house, they were able to secure Emily from them. My brother and his wife were arrested on serious charges such as child welfare law violations and violations of laws preventing child exploitation. Despite being first-time offenders, they could not avoid imprisonment. The photos of a child they had been taking over several years were considered highly malicious. Once an image is leaked on the internet, it can never be erased. I was shocked when the police told me this, but fortunately, my sister-in-law had not digitized or sold Emily's photos, and they were securely stored, preventing any leakage. I don't understand how my brother, who had been kind and reliable to me, could have become such a terrible person. We had been helping each other out as usual until then. The fact that I didn't notice this distortion scares me. Anyway, I want them to face what they've done. Following the arrest of my brother and his wife, the so-called monsters were also brought in for questioning by the police. They apparently argued their innocence, claiming that because their plans had not been successful, they weren't guilty. However, it seems that the discovery of someone else's child's photographs at their residence, and their involvement in other criminal acts confessed by my brother and his wife during their interrogations, led to them also being arrested on multiple charges. After we took care of the monsters lurking in our lives, we went to the Child Protective Services to inquire about Emily's situation. Her parents were arrested, leaving her without anyone to care for her. In fact, they were unfit to be guardians in the first place, so custody of Emily was taken away from my brother and his wife. That said, neither my brother nor I have any living parents, and my sister-in-law's family is completely estranged. We learned that if no one from my sister-in-law's family would agree to take her in, Emily would be taken in by foster parents. After talking it over with my husband, we decided to adopt Emily. To me, Emily is not only someone I'm greatly indebted to, but also a girl I've grown to love as my own daughter. The thought of leaving her was simply unbearable. Luckily, my husband agreed and we saw this as an opportunity to move to my in-laws' town. Our daughter, who loves her grandparents and has always wanted an older sister, is overjoyed. She's been excitedly looking forward to the weekend, when she could see her grandparents more often, and now her wish of having Emily, who she adores, as her big sister came true. And as for Emily, who finally got out of the clutches of her abusive parents, she's adapting incredibly well to her new environment as an older sister. It's amazing how resilient kids can be. She's beginning to lead a happy and peaceful life.